Rikers Island, scariest prison ever? Inside America's real hellhole. The body in the cell. The night was bitterly cold, the kind that wrapped New York City in silence except for the distant hum of sirens. On Rikers Island, however, silence was a foreign concept. Even after midnight, the prison pulsed with noise, the clang of steel doors, the shouts of men trapped in cages, the whispered deals of gangs that controlled entire blocks. But on that January night, something else broke the routine. At 2:17 a.m., a correction officer making rounds on the East facility stumbled upon a sight that would haunt him forever. Cell 3B, one of the oldest units in the jail, held not just an inmate, but a corpse. The body hung lifeless from a bedsheet knotted to the rusted bars, head tilted unnaturally to the side. At first glance, it looked like another suicide, the kind Rikers was infamous for. But when the officer leaned closer, the details told a darker story. The sheet wasn't tied high enough for a real hanging. The inmate's knuckles were split, his ribs bruised, and the corners of his mouth stained with dried blood. This wasn't despair. This was murder. Within an hour, detectives from the NYPD were ferried across the East River. Their faces were grim, not because death on Rikers was unusual, but because this death carried the stench of conspiracy. The victim, 29-year-old Daryl D. Jackson, wasn't just any inmate. He was a former gang affiliate turned informant, awaiting transfer after testifying against members of the Trinitarios, one of the island's most feared prison gangs. The message was clear: snitches don't survive Rikers. Detective Maria Torres, a seasoned investigator hardened by years of chasing killers through the Bronx, was the first to step inside the cell. She noted the bruises, the rushed staging of the body, and the silence of the tear. Every other inmate kept their eyes low, pretending to sleep. It was the oldest trick in Rikers: silence as survival. Still, Torres's gut told her this wasn't just gang retribution. There was something sharper beneath the surface. The way the body was displayed, the meticulous timing during the shift change, this wasn't random violence. It was orchestrated. Daryl Jackson had enemies on both sides of the law. He had betrayed his gang, yes. But he had also whispered to federal agents about corrupt correction officers smuggling drugs, phones, and even weapons inside. He was a dangerous man to keep alive, and a dangerous man to let die. By dawn, the prison was locked down. No movement, no visits, no outside contact. The commissioner wanted answers before the story hit the press. But rumors travel faster than truth on Rikers. By breakfast, every tear buzzed with whispers, "They got D." Some said it was the Trinitarios. Others swore it was the COs. A few even claimed Jackson had staged his own death to escape a transfer he knew would kill him anyway. Detective Torres wasn't buying it. The bruises told her this man fought for his life. And if he fought, someone else bled. She ordered a search of the block. Beneath a cracked floor tile in the shower room, officers recovered a shiv fashioned from a sharpened toothbrush, streaked with dried blood. DNA would take days, but in Rikers you didn't need science to know the truth. Violence left its own signature. Still, Torres knew the case would be suffocated before it reached daylight. Inmates wouldn't talk, and correction officers had their own code of silence. Everyone had something to lose. Everyone had something to hide. But then came the first twist. Reviewing security footage, Torres noticed a gap. 4:13 minutes between 1:54 and 2:07 a.m., the cameras covering Tier 3 went dark. When the feed returned, the corridor looked undisturbed, except for one thing. A guard's key ring, usually clipped at the officer's waist, glinted on the floor near Jackson's cell. Someone with authority had been there. As Torres stared at the frozen frame of the key ring, her partner muttered the obvious: "This isn't just a prison murder. This is an inside job." And then, just as the detectives began connecting dots, a call came from the warden's office. Another inmate, housed 2 blocks away, had been found unconscious. A note was clenched in his hand, scrawled in shaky letters with a piece of pencil lead. Jackson wasn't the first. He won't be the last. The walls of Rikers seemed to close in, and Torres realized she wasn't just investigating one death. She had stumbled into something far larger, a conspiracy built inside America's most dangerous jail. And when the basement of the East facility was searched hours later, what the officers found made even the veterans go pale. Hidden behind a rusted supply door was a small, windowless room. Shackles bolted to the walls, a bloodstained mattress, and beneath it, a ledger with names, dozens of them, crossed out in red ink. Daryl Jackson's name was the most recent, but it wasn't the last. The ledger of death. The discovery of the hidden basement sent shockwaves through the command chain of Rikers. Officially, the warden ordered that the room be sealed, the evidence logged, and all records transferred to the NYPD. Unofficially, whispers spread that some of the higher-ups wanted it buried before journalists caught the scent. Detective Maria Torres had no intention of letting that happen. She pressed the blood-stained ledger flat on the table in the small interview room, staring at the list of names. Each entry was marked with a date. Some matched known deaths, stabbings, overdoses, so-called suicides that had made brief headlines. Others, however, didn't appear in any prison record. No file. No body. Just vanished. Her partner, Detective Calvin Reed, leaned against the wall, shaking his head. This isn't just gang payback. This is a kill list. The problem was obvious. If the ledger was real, then someone had been running an underground execution ring inside Rikers for years, unchecked, undocumented, and hidden in plain sight. And worse, they had inside access. Shackles. Keys. A basement no inmate should even know existed. Torres knew she couldn't trust the correction staff. Too many had already been caught running contraband for gangs. Too many looked the other way when violence exploded. But the cold, methodical handwriting in the ledger suggested something more terrifying. This wasn't a gang free-for-all. This was organized, calculated, controlled. She decided to start with the unconscious inmate found with the note. His name was Reggie Wallace, a quiet man in his early 30s serving a sentence for armed robbery. He was known to be withdrawn, not affiliated with any gang. Yet someone had targeted him for knowing too much. When he woke in the prison infirmary hours later, his lips were split, his left eye swollen shut. Torres sat by his bedside. "Reggie, who gave you that note?" His voice was a rasp. Didn't see his face. Just shadow under the door. Slid the note in. "Told me I'd be next if I talked." "Talk about what?" Reggie's gaze darted toward the ceiling as if searching for hidden cameras. "They've been moving people. At night. No roll call, no records. Guys disappear. Everyone says they were transferred. But they're not. They go downstairs. They don't come back. The basement." Torres felt her chest tighten. She needed proof and she needed it fast. But before she could push further, 2 correction officers entered the infirmary, insisting Wallace was too weak for questions. She caught the flicker of fear in his eyes as they wheeled him away. He wouldn't last long. That same night, an anonymous tip came through Torres's unlisted cell phone, a number only used for confidential informants. The voice was distorted, but the message was sharp. "Stop digging into Jackson. Stop digging into the basement. Rikers belongs to the ones who control it, and you're playing with fire. Next time it won't be an inmate in a cell. It'll be you." The call ended before tracing was possible. Torres slammed her phone down. Someone not only knew her movements but had access to her private line. That meant leaks, which meant the circle of trust was shrinking fast. By dawn, news of Daryl Jackson's suspicious death had leaked to the press despite the commissioner's gag order. Headlines screamed across New York tabloids, "Snitch slain at Rikers. Hellhole or killing ground?" The city was awake, angry, and demanding answers. But before Torres could even prepare for the storm, another discovery shook the case wide open. Correction Officer Henry Alvarez, a veteran with 20 years at Rikers, was found dead in the staff parking lot, shot twice in the chest, execution style. His badge and sidearm were missing. In his locker, detectives found something worse, a second ledger. This one was cleaner, neater, updated weekly. Alvarez wasn't just complicit, he had been keeping score. The names inside weren't just inmates. They included officers. Reed scanned the pages, his face pale. This isn't a hit list anymore. This is a roster. Someone's managing a whole system of disappearances. And Alvarez was either keeping records for them, or about to turn them in. Torres knew they were standing at the edge of something massive, bigger than one inmate's murder, bigger than one gang's revenge. This was an enterprise. A shadow organization embedded within Rikers itself. And then came the twist that turned everything on its head. When Alvarez's phone records were pulled, they showed dozens of calls to a single number. Not a burner phone. Not an inmate's contraband cell. But an office extension, inside the Department of Correction headquarters in Queens. The conspiracy wasn't confined to Rikers. It was bleeding into the very institution meant to control it. Torres realized the danger wasn't just about solving a case anymore. It was about survival. Because if names could be crossed off so easily in a ledger, hers might be next. And as the night fell over Rikers once more, another alarm rang out from the East facility. Inmate Reggie Wallace, the one who had tried to speak, was missing from the infirmary. His bed was empty. His file marked transferred. But Torres knew the truth. Reggie had gone downstairs. And this time she was determined to follow the descent. Detective Maria Torres stood at the rusted door that led into the basement of the East facility, her pulse hammering in her ears. The same hidden room where Daryl Jackson's name had been crossed out. The same place where Reggie Wallace had vanished hours earlier. She had gone through official channels, demanded access, but every request was delayed or buried. So now she was here off the books with only Detective Reed at her side. The guard posted outside gave them a nervous glance, then turned his back as if he hadn't seen a thing. Even that silence felt like complicity. Everyone on Rikers seemed to know there was something buried below, but no one dared name it. The air grew heavier as they descended the narrow stairwell. The stench of mildew, rust, and something metallic, blood, old but not forgotten, clung to the concrete walls. The hum of the prison above faded until only the sound of dripping water and their own footsteps remained. At the bottom, the room opened into a long, dim corridor lined with locked steel doors. Torres's flashlight beam danced across numbers crudely painted above them. 1, 2, 3, 4. Each one carried its own weight of silence. Room 3 was unlocked. Inside, shackles hung from the walls, still slick with recent use. A torn prison jumpsuit lay crumpled on the floor, stained dark. Torres felt her stomach twist. She thought of Reggie. She thought of Daryl. She thought of all the names crossed out in red. Then came the sound, faint, muffled, almost imperceptible. A voice. Help. Torres snapped her light to the farthest door. Reed shoved it open. Inside, half-conscious and chained to the wall, was Reggie Wallace. His face swollen, his lips split open, but his eyes alive with terror. "They're coming," he whispered hoarsely. "You shouldn't be here." Before Torres could free him, the corridor lights flickered on. Bright, blinding, stripping away the shadows. Footsteps echoed down the stairwell. Not hurried, not panicked, measured. From the doorway emerged 3 correction officers in full uniform, their badges gleaming under the fluorescent lights. Behind them, a man in a tailored gray suit stepped forward, adjusting his tie as though he were entering a boardroom, not a dungeon. Torres recognized him instantly. Deputy Commissioner Alan Mercer. The very man responsible for oversight of Rikers operations. "Well," Mercer said calmly, his voice smooth and almost bored, "I see our little secret is out." Torres raised her weapon. "What is this? What the hell are you doing here?" Mercer didn't flinch. "What we've always done. Containment. Order. Control. Rikers is a cesspool, detective. Gangs run it, officers bleed for it, the city ignores it. But this," he gestured at the chained prisoners, the ledgers, the bloodstains, "this is how we keep balance. We remove the threats. The agitators. The ones who can't be managed." Reed's jaw tightened. "You're killing them." Mercer smiled thinly. "We're pruning the tree. Without us, this island burns. With us, it stays contained. It's not murder, detective. It's maintenance." Torres's grip tightened on her gun. "Daryl Jackson? He was your maintenance." Mercer's expression hardened. Jackson was reckless. He was feeding the feds too much. Not just about gangs, about us. He signed his own fate. Behind him, the officers closed in, hands on their batons. The air felt electric, the kind that sparks just before lightning strikes. Torres knew they were outnumbered. But she also knew she couldn't let this die in the basement. Suddenly Reggie croaked out, "Ledger. Phone, in his suit pocket." Mercer's eyes flickered with rage. It was all Torres needed. She lunged, seizing Mercer by the collar, ripping the phone from his inside pocket. Reed fired a warning shot into the ceiling, the explosion of sound deafening in the narrow hall. The officers froze just long enough for Torres to drag Reggie free of the shackles. They ran. The stairwell shook with shouts and pounding boots behind them. Up, 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 through the corridor, past the rusting pipes, into the chaos of the prison above. Inmates roared from their cells as the lockdown klaxons blared. The entire island seemed to be awakening, like a beast stirred from its slumber. By dawn, Torres had smuggled Reggie off the island under federal protective custody. The phone she'd taken was handed directly to a U.S. attorney. Inside were messages, photos, and transfers, proof of years of coordinated killings, covered up at the highest levels of the Department of Correction. The scandal exploded across headlines, Rikers' death ring exposed. Deputy Commissioner tied to prison killings. Protests surged. Politicians called for reform. Mercer was arrested, stone-faced as cameras flashed. But Torres felt no victory. Because 3 weeks later, as she left her apartment one quiet morning, she found an envelope taped to her door. Inside was a single sheet of paper torn from the original ledger. A new name had been written in neat, steady handwriting. Detective Maria Torres. Beneath it, in red ink, the date was left blank, waiting to be filled. And somewhere, deep within the bowels of Rikers Island, another light flickered on. Another door slammed shut. The machine kept turning. Because prisons don't forget. And hellholes never close.